Hi everyone, thanks for joining in. I don't want to talk about politics today. I want to talk about healthy eating and lifestyle. Now, I'm not a nutritionist and not a doctor, but I have been passionately following the developments in these spheres for my own benefit and for the benefit of everyone around me. I believe it is critical, especially in our time and age, to be aware of and conscious of how lifestyle and eating affects us. And what I want to do is just very briefly summarize a very, I think, important but straightforward concept. Today, it's clear to everyone that there are increasing problems for people when it comes to health issues in particular, whether it's obesity or chronic diseases of any kind. There are an increasing number of people on blood pressure medications for blood pressure problems, people with all sorts of debilitating diseases, diabetes being another, in huge numbers globally, especially in the Western world, but also elsewhere. So what I want to bring attention to is something that I've been thinking about for some time, and that is that, in my view, there has to be a very strong correlation between these increasing diseases and the way we live our lives. Now, of course, everyone is talking about that. I'm not the only one. There are large numbers of professionals that discuss this and study this intensively. What I want to raise as a point of issue is that to understand this situation, there are a number of factors influencing it, which many people talk about, and that includes marketing, profit motive in terms of sales of types of foods, people under pressure and what they have time to cook and not to cook, financial stresses, what people can or can't afford in terms of healthy foods, time pressure in terms of whether or not people can afford time to exercise, to go out and spend time outdoors and run, walk, jog, bike ride, whatever it might be. But there is another issue as well, which is all encapsulated within this, and that is that we have to look to the past. And by that I mean we have to look into the past several 100,000 years to understand why we have all these chronic diseases and problems that are becoming an increasing burden on everybody and on society at large. So, put briefly, what does that mean? What do I mean? Well, it's simply this. Homo sapiens, humans, what we are, Homo sapiens, have been on this planet for approximately between 300 and 500,000 years. That means that for the vast majority, well over 99.99% of our time on Earth has been under incredibly different conditions to the way that it is now. The way we live today is approximately 50 to 100 years old. So the phenomenal amount of technology and the amount of time that we spend on it and with it, the amount of time that we spend running to and from work, and with technology spending on work, with our mobile phones and our computers, almost 24/7, except for when we're asleep, but even then we're thinking about work. The types of foods we eat, the supermarkets that we frequent, and the multitude of things that they sell, often processed and fast, to keep up with our fast-paced world. These are new things. These aren't old. Cars, televisions, computers, mobile phones, even phones themselves, radios, electric bikes, electric scooters, aeroplanes, trams, trains, all sorts of automobiles. These are relatively new in the context of human history, somewhere between 50 and 100 years old at most. Some date back a little bit more, but not much more. These new forms of life have completely changed the way that we interact with each other, the way we interact with society, and the way that we interact with life itself. The way we run or don't run, the way we behave or don't behave, the way we sit in cars or don't sit in cars, the way we sit on buses or don't sit on buses. These are massive changes that are relatively new, and not coincidentally, the disproportionate rise in chronic diseases and problems, fatigue, back pain and knee pain and everything else is all really something that's developing exponentially now. And it's not a coincidence, because for 99.99+% of human history, this is not how we lived. So it's important to learn and to know how we lived prior to this so-called modern age. And the way we lived was we moved around. We constantly moved. For hundreds of thousands of years, bar this very little period of time, we did not sit in cars. We did not sit on buses. We did not sit on aeroplanes. We did not sit in offices all hours of the day. We did not sit in front of computers. We did not sit in front of TVs. We did not sit talking on the phone. We moved, we moved, we moved. We were hunters and we were gatherers, and we were nomadic. We moved. Even towns and villages are only approximately 10 or so thousand years old. In the context of human history, that's very little as well. We were a moving creature. We move, we move, we move. Our bodies were built for this. That's why this is important, because our structure, our frame is built to move. Our structure, our frame, our physiology is built to participate in regular activity. Whether it's hunting or gathering, or moving our gear to the next neighborhood where there may be better resources, whether it's water, or whether it's shelter, or whether it's some type of food. And so our history, 99.99+% of our history, is the time under which we evolved as human beings. It is the time during which we evolved physiologically and arguably emotionally and mentally, because also emotionally and mentally we lived very differently. We lived in communities. We hunted together, we gathered food together, we cooked together, we lived together, we reared children together, we protected each other together, we told stories to each other together in communities. We lived very differently. We are a communal, a social species. So the physiological and the mental problems that we are dealing with today are very different to the way that we lived life yesterday, for almost all of yesterday, in fact. And I believe that to understand the issues that we are grappling with, both physiological and mental, the chronic diseases, the back pain, the joint pain in the knees, and everywhere else, we have to look back. We have to look at how we evolved, the periods of time over which we evolved, socially and physiologically. And I don't believe that we are doing this enough. Now, I know that there are phenomenal scientists looking at these things, and historians and anthropologists and sociologists looking at these things. But I don't believe it is sufficiently in the public sphere. I don't believe it's being taught sufficiently to us. For example, I feel that I've had to teach myself how to eat. In a world that is so fast-paced and full of fast food, arguably so much junk food, that causes so much suffering in so many people, I've had to teach myself how to eat. I, for one at least, did not get taught this properly, if at all, at school or in life generally. So I've had to learn through books, through magazines, through the internet, through all the various dietitians and people teaching these things. I've had to learn how to eat, how to deal with blood pressure, how to deal with chronic issues that are spreading across the world in forms other than, or in ways other than through just drugs, medications. They have their place. Don't put them down. It's not what I'm saying. But we have to learn how to eat. People don't know. The friends and colleagues and people I've met throughout my life, especially over the past 5-10 years, where I too have been taking a much more active role in teaching myself how to eat, I have discovered that most people don't know, and people have so many questions for me, who's really untrained in this, just a person who's picked it up from books himself, rather than getting formal qualifications. People don't know the most basics on how to eat, what to eat. People don't know the basics about running or walking. I've had to teach myself the basics, what kind of shoes to wear, what not to wear, flat foot or not flat foot, how to move, how not to move. The basics we're not taught, the amount of exercise we should be getting, relevant to who we are and our daily activities and chores and our state of health. I don't believe we get this enough, but I do believe that it is critical to our survival. It is critical to our health. It is critical to who we are. Even breathing. I'm learning now how to take time to breathe properly each day. We just don't get taught these things, or at least I certainly did not. And it has a huge impact on us, mentally and physiologically, because food, exercise, activity, social activity affects us in every way, mentally and physiologically. And so it's important, and I'm trying to put out there how important it is for us to start thinking about this, at least for those who haven't had the chance to, or who haven't had the opportunity to be taught to think in different ways. We're so caught up in our fast lifestyles that we don't really take time, or don't have the time, or don't even know where to start learning about how to best live. And there is incredible science on this, but it's not, I believe, so easily accessible. But it's in the past that we have to start from in terms of looking. It's in the past. It's not a coincidence. It's not a coincidence economically, because we live in a fast-paced world with fast food and fast lifestyles. But nor is it a coincidence because our entire practice of life and activity of life has changed with this fast world. And in the past, it was extremely different. So our physiology was built for running, was built for walking, was built for standing. And we're doing the opposite almost all the time. Almost all the time. And that's affecting us ever so. And it's affecting who we are as a species, and it's affecting who we are individually. We have to look to the past to understand who we are, because that is how we evolved. We didn't evolve over the past 100 years. We evolved over the past several 100,000 years. So people have said to me, don't run so much because you're going to hurt your joints and your pelvis and whatever else. In reality, there's truth to that depending on what situation you're in. But if you're regularly exercising and involved in activity, then really you're doing something that nature has taught us to do. Nature built us to do. Nature built us to run, because it is with running that we could hunt or run away to save ourselves or from bad weather. So I'm not saying people should get up all of a sudden and run. Obviously, it's dependent on their personal situation right now, and it may take time to readjust to living more as to how we lived in the past, going back more than 100 years ago, how we lived before this fast-paced world, because our physiology is built for that, and I don't think that we are living in accordance with who we are and how we were built. Just some food for thought. I'm happy to talk about this in more detail in the future as well, in terms of how I've changed my lifestyle, what I eat, what I think is important, what activity I partake in, and how I think we can protect ourselves and each other in this ever fast changing world. Thanks everyone, thanks for listening.